Our brains make up stories to make sense of our experiences. Unfortunately, our own biases built through our filters, aka our personality, past experiences, conditioning, environment, etc., filter the way that we receive those experiences, hence allowing us to create our own perception of our reality through our unique lens and our mental stories. And consciously, that makes us living our old stories and staying stuck in the past. So how could we stop having these made-up stories impact our everyday choices? Or how could we revamp them altogether? Welcome to Conscious Matters. I'm Melissa. On this channel, I talk about conscious living through empowerment and holistic wellness, especially mindfulness. Mental stories are very interesting because when something happens to us, our unconscious automatic reaction is to wonder why. If you send a text to one of your friends and that friend doesn't answer right away or takes several hours, if not several days, to answer to you, depending on your past experiences, your own conditioning, your environment, or pretty much everything that builds on your biases, your brain might start to construct a new mental story, finding all sorts of reasons that will confirm your own biases about yourself and also about others. So that friend not answering you right away, your mental story might conclude that, oh, they don't care about me. That's why they don't answer to me. Oh, because the way I use that word, maybe they didn't understand my humor and now they're offended. That's why they don't answer to me. Whole story. Instead of just thinking that person might be busy. Maybe they're at work. Maybe they're juggling with so many things. Maybe they don't have signal where they are right now. So they probably didn't even see your text in the first place. So we all have these automatic mental stories that will confirm our own biases. And then we judge the other person in the process of creating that story. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your unconscious mind will find ways to find proof of whatever story you tell yourself. Let's say you want to apply to a new job opportunity that is higher rank than the kind of position you have right now. You see that job ad, you get excited. You're like, oh, look at all of the new things that I will learn and what I can give also to that company. And look at the salary. It's so much more than what I'm making right now when I know I have the skills to do that. You get excited and then you complete your sentence with that dreading word that crashes your momentum, but I want to apply to that job position, but there's no use because I don't have the criteria that they want for that position, so I should not apply altogether. Or this is everything that I've ever wanted, but it's too good to be true, so it might not even be true. It might be a scam. We complete very often our sentence with but followed by our distorted story that we use when we are confronted to an emotional trigger or when our cup is depleted. We go straight for the story. We go straight for that made-up illusion that oftentimes is not in alignment with the momentum that you had a minute before. Once again, we have so many stories running through our head that different factors contributed in creating. Nobody cares about me. I don't matter. I'm not enough. I need to do more. Nobody gets me. I'll always be misunderstood. I'll always be a misfit. Nobody will truly see me for who I am. I'm on my own. Nobody really loves me. Or another one, a very common one, I cannot depend on anybody but myself. I don't need anyone. Witness your story, or I should even say stories, because most of the time we have many running at the same time, and see which ones are the most recurring, around which themes your automatism is to go straight for the mental stories. Of course, all of this process is completely unconscious. We don't even realize. It becomes so second nature that it just happens without even us knowing or realizing or being aware that it's happening. Dr. 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, famously known as the holistic psychologist, gives 3 steps to deconstruct these mental stories. So the first step is to ask for objective feedback to that person. If we take back the example of your friend who didn't text you back right away or took a long time to do so, ask that person why. Get that feedback. Maybe that friend will tell you they had this crazy day at work, they didn't have 1 minute to even check into the phone. Or maybe they were at the swimming pool and the phone were in the lockers. Maybe they're going through something that is quite emotional actually, and they didn't have that emotional space to give to anyone, or at least not to you, to go through the text and respond. They didn't have that energy within themselves to be able to be present for someone else. The second step that she gives is to reframe what happened. So let's say that you didn't get that objective feedback from the other person, but you maybe, since now you're practicing mindfulness and you're very aware and you working on yourself, you might be able to see the pattern that you had, or maybe how you directly went to judgment, you directly went to accusation instead of giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. So that will help you to reframe what happened. And so either with you by yourself doing that, or you receiving the objective feedback of the other person, it helps going to step 3 that she gives, which is choosing a new response. So now that you had that experience that triggers something in you emotionally, that pushes you to automatically go to your unconscious mental story that obviously found evidence to confirm it. Now you can see, after reframing that story, that you don't have to always go to the doomsday scenario. You don't have to go to the story that put yourself down, that pokes at your old wounds. So that's the framework that she gives. And I would even add 3 things. If your mental stories are so strong and so recurring, I would say understanding the emotions that are behind the stories, behind that pattern of you always thinking that people don't care about you when they're not responding right away. Dig a little bit deeper. What emotions are you feeling? Where are they coming from? Can you retrace in your past different experiences that made you feel like that? And that would explain why you always go back to these experiences, or this experience in particular, every time that this one is triggered. And the other thing that I believe really helps on top of the framework from the holistic psychologist is to question your thoughts. When you challenge your thoughts, it helps you see, is it the reality? Is it the truth? Or at least my truth? Am I literally making things up? Am I putting myself down? Or am I genuinely caring even though I'm bluntly honest with myself? Because most of the time, the made-up stories that we have are lies. It doesn't mean that the past experience didn't happen or didn't affect you a certain way, but do you really have to relive that every single time in your present and eventually in your future when that experience is done? Is it really true right now? It was true then, but is it true right now? Do you need to repeat that story to yourself? So that's why I think understanding the emotion and doing the emotional process of releasing that emotion attached to a certain type of experiences is so important, so you don't repeat it in another situation that seems similar to it. And when you have a good training on reframing your thoughts, of choosing a new response, understanding your emotions, knowing if it's the truth or not, when that mental story starts to creep in, redirect your thought. It helps in breaking the thought pattern by just like saying a word to yourself, snapping your fingers. It's like a electrical circuit. You just like send it the other way. What helps? Something that I do that is probably very strange, but when I realize, because now I'm very much aware of the type of stories I tell myself when I'm emotionally triggered, when it starts to come in and I start to, getting into it, I just shake my head and say thinking. Sounds like a crazy person thinking. But I don't have to say thinking out loud, but it just helps the energy and the focus that I'm starting to give to that thought to be redirected and to get me out of that little hole that I'm starting to dig for myself. I'm just like automatically redirecting my thoughts, shifting my focus to something else. But I guess that helps when you're a little bit more advanced or have a little bit more practice under your belt in letting go of your mental stories. So being aware of our mental stories and letting go of them is so important, because where attention goes, energy flows. You don't want to put your energy in something that turns out to be a lie, or at least something that doesn't serve your highest good and restricts your potential and limits your growth. Another interesting explanation of the fact that our mental stories are made up and turns out to be lies most of the time. I don't want to say 100% because there's always room for error, but a lot of times they are lies. And that's what neuroscientist Dr. 𝗪𝘁𝗰 explains in his theory. And this is very interesting because he says that everything that happens before now for each one of us is stored in the brain as a form of memory. And compared to thoughts, they work differently. According to him, every time that we recount or we tell a story from the past, aka a memory, we use the last modified version of it. For example, let's say that as a child in kindergarten, one of your parents was very late to pick you up, but since you're a kid, you don't really have the notion of time. You thought that your parent was never gonna come, that they abandoned you at school and you were all by yourself. So now, every time that someone is late to meet you, you have that emotional trigger of abandonment. Doesn't mean that your parent actually abandoned you, they were just late because of X reason, but to you as a kid, in your kid's brain, you associated that as abandonment. So now you have that wound within yourself and that mental story that you are always left behind. So when people arrive late or you're not invited to something, you have that mental story telling you they don't care about me, they always leave me behind, they forget about me, my voice doesn't matter. And then you start living your life playing small, shrinking yourself, and not living life according to your potential and what you have to give to this world. But every time that you think about you waiting for your parent at school, you remember the version of the last time you thought about that memory. You're not recounting the actual event anymore, but every time that you told that story, every time the version of that memory changes. And I thought that was very interesting because it doesn't invalidate the fact that that event happened. It makes you question, is that story serving me today? Is it a service or a disservice to me to keep on replaying and believing into that mental story today? And that's pretty powerful when we think about it. He even says that the fact that we keep on modifying our memory, which means pretty much the event that happened, at least in our mind, which means that we can change our past, our experience of things in some capacity. Because at the end of the day, our reality is just our own perception of reality. So knowing that we could change our memories and rewire our thoughts and not buying into a certain type of stories means that we can build or create different versions of reality and that we can actually control our narrative. That doesn't mean start lying about your past and who you are, so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that. It just means reframing it. You thought you were being abandoned. That's how you felt when your parent didn't show up at the time that where all of the kids were picked up. But now that you're an adult, you know what it is to have responsibilities, and sometimes it can exceptionally happen that you don't arrive on time even though you really want to. Now see that event through your lens of an adult, not as a child anymore. And that will help you create a different perception of the reality of the event itself that happened in the past. But let's be clear, this is really not about starting to lie about yourself and being dishonest about your past experiences. I know one of my mental stories is I'm not doing enough. I know it's one that I need to keep on working on, but please share in the comments what is your mental story and how are you going to reframe it to choose a new, healthier response. Remember that we are all on a journey, so don't let yourself get trapped in those mental stories that you keep on unconsciously telling yourself and which are a full disservice to your growth, to your potential. It's the story you tell yourself that either stands in your way or helps you to become the version of yourself you want to be. So keep on practicing mindfulness, doing that inner work, because the more that you heal, the more your stories will change positively. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, stay true, keep showing up for yourself, and let your soul lead the way.